Hey there, Ride the Car Guy here, and today, let's start this thing. This is the 13th and final part of this Titan rebuild series, so if you're interested in, well, the first 12 parts, go ahead and click in the upper right-hand corner and you'll see all of those. We started this project back in November of last year, and we're just now getting it done. We had a couple delays, we'll say, but that's okay. Everything's put back together. I did a final check of all of the major bolts, all the connections, all the electrical connections, everything that we need to get put back together, and today's the day where we finally start it. I'm super excited for today, but I'm also like cripplingly nervous. I feel like I'm gonna puke because this is the first time I've ever done a full rebuild on my own. The only things I didn't do myself is the head work. I had to get that machine work done, at a machine shop, and the honing of the cylinders. Everything else is 100% on me. So if this thing blows up, it's because I did something wrong. But we're not gonna think negatively, we're gonna think positively, and I wanna walk you through the first steps I'm gonna take when starting this engine and doing the initial break-in. Initial break-ins seem to be quite a controversial topic with gearheads, and I went and read tons of forum posts, watched a bunch of different YouTube videos, and I'm borderline, paralysis by analysis here, so I kind of just came up with my own thing and we're just gonna go with it. I'm not saying this is how you should do it, I'm just telling you how I'm going to do it with this engine. Now, what we're gonna start with is, of course, doing a final check of everything. Make sure you go through, make sure all your electrical connections are there, all your evap, your fuel lines, of course, anything that you previously disconnected, make sure it's all connected and tightened down to spec. I already did all that. You don't need to watch that. Just go back through, make sure everything looks good. And then next we're gonna do priming. Obviously all of the oil galleys, the main galley, the cams, everything's completely empty of oil right now, right? So we wanna get the engine primed, make sure we get oil up to those places before we start turning over the engine to minimize any wear that we put on our new bearings. Then we're gonna do the initial startup. I'm gonna have Jesse in here. He's gonna be varying the RPMs while I'm looking around the engine for any leaks, making sure there's nothing crazy going on, make sure it sounds good. And for me, I actually need to look at my transmission fluid as well because we took that down and I refilled that as well. So you probably don't have to do that unless you also took off your transmission, but we'll talk about that as well. Then after those 20, 30 minutes of varying RPMs, I'm gonna drop the initial oil. So I got some conventional motor oil, no fancy detergents or anti-wear technology in it. This is effectively just to do the initial cleaning and get anything out that I left in there. And then once we swap that out, I think I'm gonna do a break-in oil. I'm not sure yet, we'll talk about it. I literally haven't even bought it yet and I'm doing it today, but we'll figure it out. Then we're gonna go drive it and we're gonna do 20, 30 miles, maybe 50 miles, I don't know, it doesn't matter. We're gonna do some miles on it. And we're gonna make sure we do some engine braking, create a lot of vacuum inside those cylinders, try to get those piston rings to stick against the cylinder wall. And then after those initial 50 so miles, we're gonna continue to do varying RPMs and make sure we don't do any long highway drives or anything like that to try to get it broken in. I'm gonna do about I think around 500 miles of the varying and make sure we're not doing anything crazy. Then after that, I'll start treating it like a regular truck. But I want to get these 500 miles on as quickly as possible. I really want to start actually using this as a truck. And that'll be it. So again, this is not necessarily advice. I'm just telling you what I'm doing. If you want to follow it, that's fine. But I would also recommend going and looking at as many sources as you can and getting as many opinions as you can and kind of come up with your own conclusions. So other than that, no more delaying. Let's go do this. Now, when you're starting a rebuild for the first time, clearly your number one thing that you want to make sure is taken care of is lubrication, right? You want to get oil to your bearings and your cams as quickly as humanly possible. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna prime the engine. Now there's multiple ways to run oil pumps on engines. Some of them can be ran independently, right? You can spin it and run oil through the engine without turning the crank, and some, the crank has to turn. And in this case, the crank has to turn. So a common way of doing this is to take the spark plugs out, pull the fuse for the fuel pump out, and then turn it over until you see oil pressure on your gauge, and literally just spin the crank and the pump to get that going. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but I went a step further and I got myself an oil primer. This here is an oil primer. Now, or I guess they call it an engine oiler, doesn't matter. So this is a Melling MPL 201, and we put oil in this, we apply pressure to it using our air compressor, and it uses that pressure to then force the oil into the oil galleys. I think I needed to buy an additional adapter kit. I don't remember, but I'll for sure put it in the description down below. But either way, we picked this up. We're gonna take the hose, we're gonna put it into where the oil pressure sensor goes, and then we're gonna apply pressure and get oil throughout the system. I don't remember this being crazy expensive. I'm gonna check how much it was. Oh, holy shit, this thing was $250, never mind. That is a ripoff. Wow, that's crazy expensive for that. But I guess, you know, it provides peace of mind, and for me personally, peace of mind is worth it. All right, guys, the name of the game here is cleanliness. So what I did is I took the other side of the hose and I just grabbed a new plastic baggie and put it over top. That way I just don't have to be careful with it. You know, if I'm setting it on the ground, it's not picking crap up off the ground. And the other side, I did have to get an adapter, so I'll for sure put that in the description below, but it says here 1/8-28 BSP. That's the one we want to use out of the kit, and that's going to go directly into the oil pressure sensor hole. I don't know, whatever you call that. Where is that? Well, it's right next to your oil filter, right here. So I just didn't reinstall it because I knew I was going to be doing this. But if it's in there, obviously just take it out and then feed this in. I want a straight shot so it's easy to turn. I just put it over one of the, I think that's an AC hose. Just feed it in here. Oh wow, did it really thread that easily? Oh, I'll be damned. Try not to cut myself again. And then I'm gonna grab a little wrench and get it on there, tighten it on as much as I can. Not gonna go crazy, we just need to hold pressure, right? It's not a permanent installation. 14 mil wrench fits on there. The oil cooler hose is just perfectly in the way. It feels okay. I'll apply some pressure. We'll go to the next step, and I'll apply some pressure and see if it leaks. If it does, obviously I'll depressurize and then take care of it. All right, next up, we grab our oil tank. I'm gonna screw off the cap, just pour them in. Probably would have been smart to use a funnel, but honestly, I wanna minimize the components that I'm using to minimize the chance of contamination. We're gonna tighten this back down, there we go. And you have a regular tire valve here, and you have this valve here that shuts off the flow of oil. So obviously shut the oil flow off first. I'm gonna spin this on here, there we go. And I'm gonna put a little bit of pressure in the tank. All right, I'm gonna put it at about 30. All right, it's about 34, whatever. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna turn this. Obviously it's gonna release the pressure and push the oil through this hole, or excuse me, through the pipe into the outlet. And then hopefully it doesn't leak. So here we go. Actually, you know what? Let me get eye protection. Sort of seems like a wise thing to do. So I'm just gonna open this up slowly and see if we have any leaking. Oh, I can already hear it. Wow, no leaking. Cool, I'm gonna check the pressure. It's at 30. I could actually hear the oil rush up the little inlet pipe and out this hose. So what I'm gonna do is let it sit for a little bit, make sure it stays pressurized. And of course, if it runs out of oil, I'll put more oil in it. But we wanna see basically where the oil's coming out. How most people do it, or how I've seen it on the internet when people use this, is they actually take the valve covers off, and there's absolutely no way in hell I'm doing that. So what we're gonna do instead is take an inspection camera and we're gonna put it down the oil fill pipe, and we're gonna see the cams that way. Theoretically, we should be able to see oil seeping out of the passages in the cams and down the side of the cams. Once we see that, that should indicate to us that there's oil up there and we're ready to start turning over. So I know I shit on this oil primer a little bit earlier, but it actually is quite nice. It seems to be working very well. I'm keeping some pressure on it, and we should be seeing, hopefully, it's gonna be hard to see. Oh yeah, you can see it. It was tough to get a camera to actually see one of the journals, but you can see it right there. See air coming out? Hey, that's excellent news. This is fantastic. I'm gonna let that sit for a minute. Obviously, we can't verify that the crank is also doing this, but I assume, right, since it's making it to the cams up top, it's much further up than the crank, and I assume right now that the oil galley in the center, the main one, is full and providing oil to the main bearings. All right, looks like we have a clean flow of oil. Still have pressure, and there's no more bubbles coming up. Yeah, and it's still flowing. This is it, guys. What we're gonna do is I'm gonna stop the flow of oil. It's probably gonna be messy, but what we're gonna end up doing is pulling that hose out, and then I'm gonna put the oil pressure sensor back in. When it comes out, I have my oil pressure sensor ready. Go, spin, spin, spin. Coiling up the hose, don't care. Come on. There it goes. All right, hurry, hurry, hurry. Oh my God, that's a lot of oil. All right, all right, all right. There it goes. Okay. Not bad, actually, not bad. We lost, I don't know, a quarter cup of oil. I'm not gonna stress. It's way better than just running it dry, right? All right, dudes. Should have thought of this earlier, but I didn't. And I don't know what the size is of the oil pressure sensor. It's huge. I think it's like 23 or something, and I don't have a deep socket that's 23. So I'm gonna say screw it. I finger tighten the hell out of it, and we're going to hope that it doesn't leak on first startup, but I don't wanna waste a bunch of time figuring it out because I don't want all the oil that we just pushed up into the galleys to be like slowly trickling back down and make this all for nothing. So I'm gonna grab the oil, I'm gonna fill it up, and then turn it over. All right, so I have the fuel pump fuse taken out. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, number 7 from the left in the rear bank. Go ahead and give it a turn for a couple seconds, Jess, and see if we get a reading on that gauge and get that red light to go away. Anything? Anything? All right, so my battery's been off of the vehicle for 7 months, and I've used it for other things. So the battery's dying. So we need to push it out, get it hooked up to the X using some jumpers, and keep trying, make sure we get a reading on that gauge. All right, we went until we saw a little bit of pressure on the gauge, and the oil pressure warning light turned off. So I'm gonna throw the fuel fuse back in, the fuel pump fuse. We'll see if it turns over, make sure we get that pressure. If we don't, we'll immediately turn it off. But yeah, that's it, let's go. So I had him put the key in the on position to pressurize the fuel pump. And I wanna make sure, since we just reconnected the fuel lines, that I don't have any leaks before we try to start. And it looks good, so we're gonna give it a try. All right, we're gonna let this sit for a couple minutes, get some more power in this battery before trying again. All right, it's been sitting for a couple minutes, and I'm gonna go rev the Xterra. Pressure?
Yeah.
Pressure? Yes! All right, we got pressure. Woo! Flip it, flip it off. It's smoking a lot. When I was refilling the transmission, I ran out of space. It was coming up the filler neck. Oh, it's coming up the filler neck, and there was a lot in there because we had emptied the cooler. We'd emptied the complete transmission, so I gotta make sure there's transmission fluid in it, and then we're gonna go start it up again. There's also some smoke coming off of it, and that's, I think, the anti-corrosion that was on the headers, the exhaust headers. So I'm not gonna worry about it just yet. I watched the fuel lines. There doesn't appear to be any fuel leaking either, so I'm gonna check the transmission fluid, and then we're gonna keep going.
Fuck! Stop! God.
The fucking overflow just broke on the fucking radiator. The radiator just broke. God, I can't believe this. All right, so this is pretty terrible. As he was varying the RPMs, I noticed some leaking out of the radiator cap. And so I said, hey, cut it off for a second and I'll tighten it back down. Well, I tightened it and the overflow snapped off of the radiator, which is molded into the inlet pipe, which is molded onto the radiator. Unbelievable. On the bright side, it worked. It was running. There was clearly no timing issues. Nothing blew up. It smells terrible, but I was expecting that with new exhaust headers and the paint that we put on the block. All of that stuff is gonna off-gas a whole ton when it gets heated up. But unfortunately, we couldn't run it to 20 minutes. I might try to find some workarounds, do something crazy here. I don't know. I have some high-strength epoxy in the garage, something like that, but we'll kind of see how it goes. All right, dudes. Sometimes desperate times call for desperate measures, right? And this is a desperate time. The absolute last thing I want to do is go source and replace a radiator right now. I'm just not doing it. So Jesse, thank you to him wherever he's at. He's over there. Went online and found a couple solutions about people repairing this particular piece. So I'll put it up in the upper right-hand corner. So thanks to whoever that did that video. I went out to a local auto parts place. I found a brake line that fits exactly fits perfectly on the inside of this hose. So I'm going to use that as a liner and for some structural integrity. And then we're going to slide it into this here, and then we're going to glue them together effectively using some epoxy weld. So right here, you'll see, I just cut the little flare off the end of the brake line. Let's see if this fits in here. Yes, fits in perfectly. A little bit of plastic shaving off, but that's great. So I'm gonna put that in, and then I'm gonna measure it out here. We'll probably use about that much. So I'm gonna go grab it and put a marking in, and then we're gonna glue them all together and hope that it works. So measure the distance we're gonna want. It's gonna be like that. So I'll do this much. There we go. Let's go cut that off, and we'll get it put in place. Cut down the other side to length, so we have about, yeah, it's almost exactly an inch actually. I'm just filing down the sides a little bit. Excellent. Put that on. Hey. Okay, not bad. You'll see that that right there is actually pretty darn strong. That feels really good. So really the glue's job isn't going to be to hold this up and support, you know, this thing holding onto it. It's going to be literally just keeping these two pieces together and keeping the liquid out. All right, I gave the brake tubing a little key basically. I just sort of sanded the outside of it to give it some texture. And I'm gonna reinstall it here. And I got JB plastic weld, world's strongest bond, cool. And I'm gonna put that on a little bit on the brake line, push it in, so it kind of, you know, seeps in there a little bit, and then put more on the brake line again, and then put it on both surfaces of the tube and push it together. This says it cures, or sets in 5 minutes, cures in an hour. That's pretty cool. And it's supposed to hold up to 3,900 PSI. So, yeehaw. Make sure you do this in a well-ventilated area. This stuff's pretty caustic. A little bit on the hose here. Push the hose in more. Apply more to the outside here. And then apply to this side as well. Perfect. And now line it up and push it on. Awesome. Make sure it's got a nice even coating all the way around it. The beauty of using the brake line, not only does it add the integrity that we need, but it also holds the two pieces together while they cure. So that's really nice. I am just gonna add a little bit of lateral tension just to kind of keep that in place. Probably don't need to do it, but you know I like this tape. Set that on top so no love bugs fly in there. And we wait, what? We wait an hour. All right, it's been a couple hours, and I actually pushed the Titan back in the garage because it started to rain and one of my windows is broken. So that's another story, another video. But I'm letting my paranoia kind of get the best of me. I'm really anxious to get this done, but I really want to make sure that I don't mess this up and let my impatience sort of, you know, create more problems. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna go ahead and use plastic weld, like putty, and put the putty around the already cured plastic weld. So I'm gonna do that next, and then I'll just let it sit overnight. I know I'm kind of delaying gratification here, but I'm gonna go ahead and let it cure, let it sit, and that way, you know, the last thing I want is for this to just pop off again when I go to start it up. It'd be very upsetting. I'm gonna just follow the directions on the plastic weld and get it put on here. All right, it looks like garbage, but you could not imagine how little I actually care. It says it will cure relatively quickly, but I'm just gonna let it sit overnight, and then we'll just, you know, start again tomorrow morning. So I'll see you guys then. All right, it is bright and early the next morning, and this looks great. It's nice and hard and feels really solid. So we're gonna say a little prayer to the epoxy gods, and we're gonna reinstall this, and we're gonna try to run this thing again. All right, that was far more successful than yesterday. And this is still, however, leaking, but it's actually not leaking from the fix. The hose appears to be a little too big, first of all, which I'm not terribly thrilled with considering how much those cost. And also the radiator cap is definitely leaking when we start to up those RPMs. So I'm gonna go to the store while this cools down. I'm gonna get myself a new radiator cap and the new oil I'm gonna put in. I am just gonna stick with conventional. I've been reading all about it. I'm not gonna do zinc additives, but I'm gonna do conventional. We're gonna do an oil change while this is still warm, and then we're gonna go drive our 20 to 50 miles. All right, that all went well. I swapped out the oil. I even captured a little bit of oil midstream, and then I also checked out the oil from the filter. And there's really nothing alarming in there. You know, there's no giant shards of metal or anything, nothing crazy that seems to be going on. So I feel good there. Swapped out, got a new radiator cap, and I swapped out the overflow pipe with the old one, so, or the hose that is. And you know, it's tighter. It's the original. They were working together for 17 years, so I'll just continue running that one. I topped off my antifreeze. It seems to be doing a pretty good job of purging itself. I've had to add water twice the last 2 times we ran it, so that's pretty promising. Topped off the transmission fluid, and well, I found out I think we have a power steering leak. Whatever, I'm gonna add some more power steering fluid, and then we're going to go do our drive, so let's go do that. All right, guys, so we're gonna go for our ride here real quick. I'm just gonna run codes. I have my little OBD2 reader, and I wanna make sure that everything looks good before heading out, and that nothing sort of triggered while we were doing our initial runs. I got a P0603 internal control module keep alive memory error. Don't know what that is. I'm just gonna clear it for now. It could be because, you know, taking the battery on and off. We'll just, you know, we'll ignore that. We'll assume that it's okay, and then if it comes back up, I'll worry about it. I also have dials on here that I can show different things, and one of them is, of course, engine temperature, so I'm gonna leave that up. But then I'm also gonna try to get transmission temperature. I don't know if I can do that on here, but we'll see. All right, looks like I can't find it, but at least I have engine temperature, which is also very critically important, right? So here we go. Let's go do our drive. All right, for our break-in, we are looking to do what are called vacuum pulls. And vacuum pulls are sort of like engine braking, except for you don't downshift. So all you need to do is slowly accelerate up to speed and then effectively coast to slow yourself down. That's gonna create a vacuum inside the engine that is supposed to pull those piston rings against the cylinder wall. So I'm gonna go real easy. I'm gonna stay very close to my house in case that radiator fix didn't hold up. We also want to do relatively smooth acceleration up to speed. Don't want any quick, what they call jackrabbit starts or anything crazy like that. Slowly get up to speed and then let the engine slow you down. And the other component is just making sure you're not staying at the same RPM. So no like long cruises on a single road, right? You want to get those RPMs changing, but don't go crazy. Don't go 5,000, 6,000 RPM. Don't go wide open throttle or anything like that. Just take it easy. So far, it seems to be driving pretty well, though. I'm pretty happy. I'm not going to bore you with this whole drive, guys. I'll let you know if anything dramatic happens, or otherwise, we'll just see you back at the garage. Check it out. Listen to this thing run. And that is bone dry. I'm so excited. Everything went off without a hitch. I drove 50 miles. The coolant never got above 200 degrees. It ran smooth, it ran perfect, it shifted through all the gears just fine. I stopped and checked the transmission fluid again, and it was great. I mean, it's flawless. I double and triple checked everything, but it doesn't matter how much you check something. When you do a job like this, you're just plagued with doubt, right? Or at least I am. I should just speak for myself. But I am so happy and so proud of this job. I don't think I've ever been more more excited and more proud of a vehicle than I am of the Titan right now. I'm not gonna bore you with the rest of the details, but we're just gonna do another oil change. We're gonna do conventional again, and then we're gonna do a gentle driving up to that 500 miles, do one more oil change, and then we're good. That's it. This has been quite an adventure, and I'm so happy you guys followed along with me. A lot of you really cheered me on, and I really, really appreciate that. This was an exceedingly difficult job. It's by far the largest job I've ever attempted on my own, on a vehicle, and I'm just so glad that it's over, to be honest. I encourage you, if you have the resources to do something like this, absolutely do it. It's gonna be difficult, it's gonna be painful, but you're gonna learn so much and be so happy and so proud of your vehicle when you're done. Again, thank you so much, guys, for following along on this journey. I'm really looking forward to doing different things, probably with the Xterra, and of course a little more on the Titan, but that's it, guys. Look out for a live stream. We're gonna do a live stream about the job itself and about all of the costs associated with it. And so I made a whole spreadsheet on all of that, and I wanna share that with you guys via live stream. So a couple weeks from now probably, but just keep an eye out for that, and then that'll sort of be able to answer all your questions on there and go from there. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Titan, done.